Welcome back to a Swans cast match preview. On my own today, unfortunately, wasn't able to sort something out to get somebody from Sheffield fan base onto the channel. So I thought I'd jump onto something quick myself. Not really done one on my own before, so we'll see how this goes. But perhaps a little bit of a different format. I'm not going to get obviously the insight from a fan of the other team. But ahead of Sheffield United, I thought there's some things to perhaps talk about going into the game, especially since the Birmingham game was postponed. It's been just over a week since the last game, basically, and we got some stuff to perhaps touch on. So starting off, then I think one of the big elephants in the room is the situation between Michael Obafemi and the club and the transfer that didn't go through to Burnley and what Russell Martin's been saying on the situation. So I think Martin's basically been saying, Obafemi, well, it's up to him when he comes back into the squad, when he gets his head back in the game. And, as soon as he does that, he's happy to put him back in the squad. It's essentially what Russell Martin has been saying. Now, I give the benefit of the doubt to Obafemi, and I was talking to some people online about it after the situation. I do not blame the decision at all to leave him out of the last game against QPR. I think personally, whatever the situation was around his transfer, it made sense to leave him out. He didn't look all that lively in the previous game when he came on as a substitute, so I was kind of expecting the situation to be he wouldn't be involved in the matchday squad after the transfer didn't go through. And that's not to say because he's necessarily sulking. I didn't think that was necessarily the case. Obviously, if that comes out that is the case, then my opinion would change, and I think the situation is different, and we could talk about that. But ultimately, if you look at the bigger picture of the situation and the way the club operates generally at the moment, we were open to selling players if the right fee comes in, whoever it was. It was always going to be the case. Obafemi was the one that was perhaps attracting concrete interest to the form of bids being actually made. So coming towards the end of the transfer window, we don't know what the situation was around what the club was saying to him. Like maybe he wasn't training fully because they didn't want him to get injuries. He's on the bench in the previous match to QPR because they don't want to get an injury, that sort of thing. Maybe not. Maybe that isn't the case and I'm wrong, but it could have been the case. And a lot of the time is the case with things like this. He could have potentially travelled up to Burnley because obviously there was a couple of bids on deadline day. And if one was accepted, if the valuation was met, he would have had to get there to do a medical and all the rest of it. So maybe he was up in that area waiting, and then a bid didn't get accepted. So perhaps he feels he's been messed around a bit. Like there could be more context to this from the player's point of view, rather than people just jumping on the bandwagon and saying like, well, he should just be doing his job. He's paid to do his job. If he doesn't want to be here, let him go. Like if he doesn't want to be here, don't him in the team anyway. There could be more to it. That's all I'm saying. I think Russell Martin's handling it pretty well. Obviously, he had a tricky situation with Jamie Patterson, and he's managed to work him back into the team. We had similar happen with Dan James in the past, and we were all happy to welcome him back in. And he was visually a bit upset with the Leeds transfer not going through after Hugh Jenkins famously pulled the plug on that one. But he did come back into the game and he did offer his all, and he did some good performances after that moment. And obviously he ended up getting a better move for him as a result thereafter. But yeah, with the Obafemi one, there's a lot of reasons. Like he could just be frustrated. Maybe he didn't want to leave at all. Maybe he was frustrated that he was even open to offers, or the club was open to accepting bids. I know they didn't accept one in the end, and that frustrated him, and that's kind of like messed with his head a little bit. We don't know until we get some actual information on that. I don't want to criticize him, but obviously it would be great if we can resolve the situation and get him back into the team. And if it is the case that he's kicking up a fuss and throwing his toys out of the pram, then yeah, okay, the situation is different in that case. And I think, we should go down the correct route of maybe making him learn his lesson. But ultimately, can we afford to not have him around the first team after Cullen's injury as well? It's difficult, isn't it? But I'm sure we'll discuss that in more detail on a podcast at a later date. Other than that, then, so some new signings, some of the new loan signings featured in the last game against QPR. So we saw a little bit of Finlay Stevens, we saw a little bit of Luke Cundle, and we saw a little bit of Armstrong Oko Flex. Now, they're offering perhaps a bit of hope that the early season form, which hasn't been so great, maybe going into the season, we can definitely improve it. It can definitely get better. These guys can offer something to take the club forward, and perhaps we can start moving up the right direction in the table. So there's some glimpses of those guys. Obviously, you can't make a full judgment on them after 30 minutes max that we saw of some of them. But it'd be nice to see some more of those guys. All of a sudden, the bench just looks like we've got that much more depth, which we were missing. And there are some options for Russell Martin to like change it up when he needs to do that. So that's all positive stuff coming from the end of transfer deadline. We haven't done a podcast perhaps since some of these signings were confirmed, or at least since we've seen them play in. So yeah, we will be doing a podcast soon. We missed last week, unfortunately, with the events at the end of the week. We just couldn't get one in. But we should have a special one lined up this week, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully you can catch it. There might be an interesting guest, so I'm sure you will enjoy. Now, looking at more positives then, Ollie Cooper is definitely a positive of the last couple of games. I can't see how he can get dropped at the moment. He's really taking his chance with both hands to get into the team, and it looks like he wants to stay there, and he's doing everything he can to stay there and to keep wearing that shirt. And I hope he does. It's really good to see somebody come through the academy and excel in that way. You don't see it that often that somebody comes in with that much impact, but it looks like Cooper might be here to stay, and we are all better for it. He's been direct, he's been making chances, he's got a couple of assists, he's looking good, and it's really nice to see someone playing with so much confidence, just wants to play his best game and is enjoying himself, I guess. But yeah, really happy to see Ollie Cooper doing well. And one big change, Russell Martin actually changed things up against QPR. So I'm wondering if that continues going forward, especially into Sheffield, which is going to be a tough game that we'll talk about in a second. They did sacrifice some possession and become a little bit more direct from the back, I would say. It wasn't necessarily like we weren't passing the ball around, but the big change being Stephen Bender coming into goal instead of Andy Fisher. Big call, that one, but it paid off. Bender showed that he is willing to just kick along when he needs to. He doesn't have to play it short all the time. If the pressure's there, he's just going over the pressure. And that's what we've been calling for a long time. So it's great to see Russell Martin acknowledging it by changing the personnel in the goals. I'm wondering whether Andy Fisher's it's just not his instinct to do that sort of thing, whereas Bender's quite comfortable doing it. So good to have two different choices, I guess, in goalkeeper. And when one of them was under a bit of pressure and everyone knew perhaps the weakness is how to play against it, changing that up, and it did make a difference. We've got to win. I'm wondering if he continues with Bender for the next games. But good positive change. It's nice to see Russell Martin isn't perhaps as stubborn as a lot of us have been making out and saying, and he is willing to make these subtle changes to the system, sacrifice quite a bit of possession. We actually had less than QPR in the last game to change the way we're playing and get a result, and we did get a result. So let's hope that continues. Now, on to the next game. Obviously, we've got Sheffield United, and they are sitting quite rosy up in the top of the league. So they're doing very well at the moment. They're on 17 points to our 9. Last season, it wasn't the best for them after they got relegated the year before. They were perhaps tipped to do well and, at least make the playoffs, but it didn't go quite as planned for them last year. They didn't manage to get their promotion back to the Premier League like they probably would have wanted first time of asking. And some of their players, they struggled. Like you've got the likes of McBurney and Brewster, who we all know about, have not hit the same form that they could for us at Sheffield United. But maybe things are about to change for them. So looking at their recent results, they've actually not lost in 7 games in the Championship. They've won 4 after their last 5 games. And their last 2 results, that includes a 4-0 win over Reading, who haven't exactly been doing bad themselves, and a 2-0 win over Hull. So they're scoring a few goals and being very good defensively. But Burney's perhaps started to find some form as well. He's scored 3 goals recently. This season he scored 3 goals, but I'm pretty sure they've come recently. He looks like he's starting to play quite well. Brewster, I know, had a long-term injury, is now back. He's been on the bench, so perhaps we'll see both of those feature in this game. And of course, they've got quality all over the pitch. They've got like Reece, Norrington Davis, the Welsh lad. In defence, they've got Norwood, of course. They've got Burge. It's going to be a hard game, I think, is the point I'm trying to make here. It will definitely be interesting to see how we cope. We obviously had a good result against QPR, so can we carry that on now? Sheffield are high flying. So, okay, so in regards to the team, perhaps that we would expect to play against Sheffield. Obviously, we are home. We didn't have the game against Birmingham, so it gave it a little bit more of a breather since the last game, although it was a week anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. I honestly don't think he's going to make any changes to the starting lineup from the game against QPR. Joe Peru obviously missed a penalty, but also scored in that game. He's definitely going to lead the line. The interesting thing, as I touched on at the beginning, will be whether Michael Obafemi can get back into the squad. Probably he won't start. I think if anything comes onto the bench, especially because of Liam Cullen's injury. And if it's not Obafemi, it will be interesting to see if who gets that slot. Perhaps Josh Thomas comes back on, or perhaps Cam Congreve, who hasn't been able to make the last couple of match day squads since his early half withdrawal a couple of games ago, which is a shame to see. Harry Darling perhaps that gets a shout at the back. Maybe one of the others rotates out if that's what he's doing, is rotating the defence. I'm not quite sure, but he's perhaps the only change I could see. Otherwise, I think he'd be quite consistent, and he's not going to make too many changes from QPR. Now, one thing that I did notice was Swansea actually posted on their website some stats about the start of the season so far. I don't know whether they're trying to justify Martin and his style and what it's doing and all the rest of it. It was a bit weird, to be honest, some of the read of it. But I'll try and talk about some of what they're saying. They're talking about two things that caught my eye. Was the passing percentages. So they've got the passing figures basically since we come back to the Championship. So under Graham Potter, I believe. So the first year was 57.4%. Then we had 52.9% on average. So you could tell Graham Potter, Steve Cooper. So 52.9 and 50.6 were the two Steve Cooper percent of average possession. Then we had 63.9 in Russell Martin's first year. And this season so far, after 5 games, was 70%, although it's gone down a bit after the first 8 games, 61.5%. So perhaps, that tweak against QPR and what they have adjusted there, definitely very evident in that percentage after 8 games compared to 5. The other thing they've highlighted is Swansea's sort of ranking in the Championship for playing forward passing, and they got a little paragraph beforehand saying that a lot of the criticisms of the style of play is either playing sideways or backwards, and saying that we're not prepared to go forward and always use recycled possession and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, the reason for that is to try and encourage players out of position, etc., etc. We know that is what the idea is behind it. They didn't give any actual figures behind how many passes they've done and all the rest of it, but they've just done a Championship ranking for this season for the following categories, right? And according to the Swans official website in this article, they've got Swansea ranking first for forward passes, ranking first for successful passes into the attack, and third, ranking first for successful passes into the opposition half as well. So that's quite interesting, because I wouldn't have thought that. Basically, I wouldn't have thought that from what we've seen, I guess. But like I said, I don't doubt these things are true. They're not going to post an article if they haven't got the actual stats there. But yeah, it's a good read, I guess. And there's more stuff in this article, so if you want to go check it out, it's on the Swans website. It's called Vital Statistics, the numbers behind the season so far. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but you can go and check that out. They've got a bit on the XG as well, highlighting how I believe our XG is actually higher than perhaps, again, we would suggest, higher than it was under Steve Cooper, both for attack and defence, to be fair. And they're also saying that we've got the second highest amount of clear shots on goal per game, second to Luton Town. So it looks like the article is pitched in a way that they're trying to say we're in a false position in the league. We should be higher. We're doing better than the league table is suggesting. It's also got another bit about the defence, saying about the lowest amount of shots per 90 minutes in the Championship, where we rank 5th. But then that just says to me that the quality of the chances the opposition's creating is higher. We're giving them better chances so they can score. So even though they have less shots, they're getting more goals, which means the chances are perhaps better. And again, that's a defending problem. But you could read into this. We could probably do a full podcast talking about the stuff they've done here. Got a bit on the average age of the squad. But yeah, so bit of a weird one. And there's a conclusion as well. So somebody's clearly like assessing the situation. It's a bit weird read for the Swans official website, because you think there wouldn't be somebody like this is sort of stuff that, you know, journalists and sort of thing do. I wouldn't have thought the Swans official website's going to be like justifying the way the club's playing or whatever, good or bad, because it's literally like an opinion piece based on the stats. But yeah, go check that out. But don't forget, as always, then I'm going to end the video here. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Next time, hopefully, we'll be back with some proper opposition preview video stuff. And let us know in the comments if you think we're going to win against Sheffield United, what you think the team will be, and maybe what you think about the Obafemi situation. It'd be good to hear your thoughts on that. And we shall catch you in the next video.